Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back to the Philosophy for Philistines channel with your host, Bill Reimer. I'd like to talk to you today about the need for moral capital. We live in an age where the narcissistic projection of virtue signaling has replaced actual virtue. I'm constantly astounded at the ignorance of fools who use virtue signaling to advertise the fact that they've never cultivated any moral capital. Narcissistic projection has become the dominant psychic phenomenon of our time as a result. There is good reason that moral capital is the costliest and most important investment anyone could make, since this investment cannot suffer from depreciation, and it is the only capital which carries one through this life while preparing you for the next. It is something no one else can give you, nor can it be stolen from you. This is why virtue signaling is so very toxic, since it replaces the need to invest in developing moral character. But the narcissist appears to lack the self-awareness needed to do so. Rather, the narcissist's sense of self-worth is externalized onto how they believe themselves to be perceived by others. Developing self-awareness invariably reveals our own moral failings. Failings which are impossible to address if we blame others for them. Therefore, the narcissist pathologically avoids self-reflection. This is the act of narcissistic projection. That projection will involve denying, blaming, confusing, and hurting others to avoid assuming accountability. These narcissistic tendencies result in sociopathic and even psychopathic behavior. But enough about Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau for the moment. Since I taught how to use problem-solving methodology, I believe it would be helpful to reduce things to their lowest common denominator. I suggest that we ask what the common trait is among those who appear to be blaming the very structure of existence for their misfortunes. It is my belief we created them. We raised generation after generation who are not made to be responsible. Not merely that, but who were taught to reject the very foundations of Western ethical values. Encouraging personal excellence and developing character was stamped out of our children by a society which had come to believe that competition and striving for excellence was not merely wrong, but in fact toxic. The need to forego immediate pleasure was replaced with instant gratification, where every child wins a prize, no matter how poorly they had performed. We told kids they were fine just the way they are, unless, of course, they became uncomfortable in their own skin due to artificially induced gender dysphoria. Then the state authorities could offer them hormone blockers and surgery to carve these children up into something that they can never be. The state projecting moral perversion onto children is the ultimate form of pathological, narcissistic psychic projection. So we are faced with a psychic plandemic, because the literature which reads as a manual on how to corrupt our youth morally is a key part of cultural Marxist critical theory being taught in virtually every humanities course in the academy today. Presently, we are faced with a cultural onslaught in virtually every area of our life. The entire point of the Philosophy for Philistines channel is to create a forum which will provide my readers and my listeners with the means of fighting back against this culture war. So let us examine how the idea pathogens of George Lukács and Wilhelm Reich have come to parasitize the minds of millions today. I will now quote from an article written by James A. Watkins, published on the 9th of February 2021, entitled Cultural Marxism, the Frankfurt School, which can be found at the following link, which is posted in the notes. Please open it up, read it for yourself. but I'll read some excerpts from it on Lukács and Reich. George Lukács, 1885 to 1971, was a Hungarian Comintern agent for the Soviet Union. Helped found the Frankfurt School. He defined his own ideas as demonic. Lukács saw the revolutionary destruction of society as the one and only solution. A worldwide overturning of values, the annihilation of the old values and the creation of the new ones. He instituted sex education in Hungary to teach children how to have sex and all about the joys of promiscuity. Lukács invented the famous term for it, free love. His teachings were that religious virtues were irrelevant, monogamy old-fashioned, parental ideas about sex backwards. He hoped to weaken the traditional family and organized religion, which he said conspired to deprive man of pleasure. He urged students to rebel against any sexual constraints. Lukács' idea was to promote licentiousness among women and children, to destroy Western civilization, with totalitarian communism as the ultimate goal. William Reich, one of the Frankfurt School's big guns, was a protege of Sigmund Freud. William Reich, 1897 to 1957, an atheist socialist. As a little boy, he fantasized about having sex with his mother. He humped the family's maid as if she was a dog when he was 4. At 11, little Wilhelm was having regular intercourse with a servant girl. By the time he became an adult, he was a full-blown pervert. Reich was an excessive masturbator and a regular at the local brothels who habitually engaged in sadomasochism and bestiality. In 1922, Reich had gone to work for Sigmund Freud. From then on, Reich would lead a life of debauchery and serial adultery, leaving behind a trail of broken homes, abortions, suffering, and suicides. Naturally, he joined the Communist Party and became friends with John Dewey, the father of modern American education. Reich's big ideas was to fuse Marx's ideology with Freud's psychology. That fusion is what became known as cultural Marxism. To set man free, he must be relieved of morality. For that to happen, he must become free of conscience. A man yielded to his primary biological impulses was what was Reich's rationale? ? If you get people involved in deviant sexual behavior, the whole idea of God just disappears automatically. In his view, a man was nothing more than an erotic impulse. Thinking is the problem. Thought is a disease that nullifies our primal urges. The ideal man is, therefore, he who satisfied his strong libidinal needs. The family must be annihilated because think how it restricts freedom. Reich decided that the Frankfurt School should use sexual immorality to bring down Western civilization, using comprehensive sex education in our public schools for the indoctrination of the young. Reich coined the term the sexual revolution, a revolution that, he predicted, once it started, no power in the world could stop it. Thus Reich laid out long ago, with the new culture of the night, and that was the end of that quote. Wait a minute. I'm still going with that quote. Thus, Reich laid out long ago with the new culture of the 1960s what to do to our nation's youth. Radicalize them. Teach them to reject authority, accepted customs and traditional conventions. Persuade them to take drugs to expand their minds, and to define their very own existence by creating their own belief system, lifestyle, and culture. But the topper was this: never judge what anyone else does. Sexual promiscuity, free love, the rejection of morality, and making pleasure the primary pursuit of life was his philosophy. Reich saw how to eradicate the family by appealing to women with the idea that they had somehow, without realizing it, been enslaved by a mysterious, nefarious thing called patriarchy. Men were the enemy. The family had to go because it was through the family that men dominated women. Fathers were superfluous. Children did not need parenting. Reich believed that children should be encouraged to have sex, a right to natural love, he called it. He wanted to liberate children because fathers and families had suppressed their sexuality. Reich taught that monogamy was a load of crap because the same partner could satisfy no one for an extended period. He condemned premarital abstinence and created the idea that the new left radicals would chant in the late 60s, smash monogamy. Being such an expert on human nature, and thus qualified to prescribe such strange medicine, one would hope Mr. Reich had personally found the happiness he promised was awaiting all who would follow his prescriptions. Alas. In his autobiography, Reich opens the curtain to unveil himself as a pathetic person, eternally frustrated and racked with strange phobias. The ordinary things we all do with ease every day made him sick with worry. He was unable to form bonds with other human beings whatsoever. He acknowledged, the most constant presence in my life was fear and anxiety. End quote. So that's the end quote from that article. And now I begin my thoughts again. So there you have it. This is the ultimate form of narcissistic psychic projection, the stated goal of which is to corrupt and pervert society via a cultural Marxist revolution. It is a complete denial that there isn't even a possibility of training our youth to develop moral capital, and it is not merely a rejection of the need for such, it is a blatant denial that such capital even exists. The pathology laid out so graphically in this article exposes an existential threat to the existence of civil society. It espouses the abdication of living a moral life. The Cultural Revolution, which emerged during the 1960s, was engineered by a group of socialist atheists who believed Marx had got the class struggle wrong. They replaced the old idea of pitting the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat with the identity politics of intersectionally oppressed versus the patriarchal tyranny of society itself. The goal of the cultural Marxists from the Frankfurt School was to overthrow Western civilization by subverting it from within. They took the long march through our institutions, which culturally shape and transmit ideas and values, namely the Fourth Estate, published print media, television, film, public schools, the academy, and now social media. Propaganda was used to undermine personal responsibility, morality, tradition, community, patriotism, unity, language, and most importantly, faith in Christ Jesus. Understanding the importance of delayed gratification while investing in our own moral capital, which accrues interest in this life and on into the next, has been replaced by hedonism and instant gratification. All the ideas which have come to parasitize society, whether that is diversity, inclusiveness, and equity, otherwise known as the die religion, the chemical and surgical reassignment of gender to children, every single species of the woke attacks on reason itself can be traced back to the Frankfurt School's critical theory. And the only thing that can possibly address these idea pathogens is to develop the moral capital needed to counter that evil. No one can do that for you. It is up to each of us to start investing in the bank of personal integrity before it's too late. And I'll add to that, is up to each of us to vote for politicians that actually have moral integrity. And you will know that by the fact of whether they lie, perpetually lie, like Freeland and Trudeau, or actually have the makings of a statesman by telling the truth. God bless you all. These are things to think and pray about. Very serious matters that we're dealing with culturally today. In fact, They couldn't be more serious, and I wish I didn't have to speak about them. Have a great afternoon.